Good evening, everyone. Welcome. خیلی خوش اومدید. Welcome to tonight's gathering, where we have united together to honor the 40th anniversary of the execution of 10 Baha'i women on June 18th, 1983, in Iran. Let us start tonight's gathering with a heartfelt acknowledgement, with gratitude and respect for the blessings of living here on this land of the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish nations, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations that continue to care for it, and their many descendants who still love, live, work, and dance here. On behalf of the local spiritual assembly of the Baha'is of Vancouver, it is my honor to welcome each and every one of you to tonight's memorial event. My name is Tabassum Eblaghi, and I'm honored to be your MC tonight. Kindly take a moment to set your phones on silent so that we can maintain a respectful and reverent spirit throughout our time together. Friends, I think it was also mentioned to please refrain from photography and videography. Professional photographers and videographers are taping tonight's program. And so please sit back, and we thank you for your undivided attention as the program unfolds. Just wanted to take a moment to thank the friends who are here, and we will be thanking the media and the dignitaries a little bit later. Tonight's program has been designed to share more information about the 10 Baha'i women who were executed for their beliefs. And the program consists of a keynote speech, sharing of personal experience from one of the ladies who lost three of her family members during 40 years ago. And we will be also doing this through the use of the arts and a video presentation. We will begin tonight with a First Nations blessing song by the Coastal Wolf Pack, followed by 2 prayers chanted in Farsi and English by Tara and Bahiye. Welcome, friends.
Good evening, everybody. Asiem saya anta yet chwam tanat amit sap katchwilam white peace nak silch in chakwan darchamalks. I would just like to say welcome everybody to the unceded territory, the Chomalquim, Skohomish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. Our group right here at Satsu Stakaya, and we are honored to be here with you guys this evening. We had found out the events that had happened, and then that we're honoring these beautiful women. The cultures, the lands that you guys are here on, We honor our women all the time. Our women are the ones, they're the life bringers. We bear lives. But not only that, but we hold up our houses. And not only that, we encourage our men, we encourage our families, we raise our children. If you can see, we have our children here with us today, and these guys are going to be the ones that carry our culture forward. These are the ones that are going to be the next generation. So we do our best to raise our children in a good way and to make sure that we leave this land and that they know exactly how to be here without us. This is how we raise them, so that way they won't need us in the future, because we leave them with everything that we have. We're going to sing an honor song to help honor these women that were here as well, but not only that, to help uplift everybody that's in this audience. This celebration, we do our best to make sure that when we honor people, we also celebrate them at the same time, because they once too walked this earth as well with us. Haichkasiyam.
هو الله. خداوند مهربان، به فریاد بیچارگان برس. ای پاک یزدان، بر این اطفال یتیم رحم فرما. ای خداوند بی‌نیاز، این سیل شدید را قطع کن. ای خالق جهانیان، این آتش افروخته را خاموش کن. ای دادرس به فریاد یتیمان برس. ای داور حقیقی، مادران جگرخون را تسلی ده. ای رحمان رحیم، بر چشم گریان و دل سوزان پدران رحم فرما. این طوفان را ساکت کن و این جنگ جهانگیر را به صلح و آشتی مبدل فرما. تویی بینا و شنوا. عبدالبها عباس.
Make me as dust in the pathway of thy loved ones. grant that I may offer up my soul for the earth, ennobled by the footsteps of thy chosen ones, in thy path. Make me as dust in the pathway of thy loved ones, and grant that I may offer up my soul for the earth, ennobled by the footsteps of thy chosen ones, in thy path. O Lord of glory, in the highest.
We would like to take a moment and introduce the dignitaries who are here with us tonight. Grand Chief Stuart Phillip. He's here tonight with his wife, Joan Phillip. Chief Phillip has served as president of the Union of BC Indian Chiefs since 1998 and is present here with his wife. So I'm so sorry the house lights aren't on. Hopefully we get to meet you later on. We're honored to have you here this evening. Mr. Bob Watts is here. He's a respected elder and recognized First Nations leader. He's the former executive director of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. His public service includes Assistant Deputy Minister for the Government of Canada and Chief of Staff to the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations, Phil Fontaine. We are honored to have you here this evening. Joining us from the city of Vancouver, we have Councillor Lisa Dominato. Welcome. Commissioner Marie-Claire Howard. Commissioner Angela Hayer. Welcome. School Board Trustee Preeti Friedcott. Welcome. And we also welcome Dave Hayer. He's the former member of the Legislative Assembly of British Columbia. Thank you. Friends, let us go back to June 18th, 1983, Shiraz, Iran. This date marks a haunting chapter of intolerance and injustice in Iran's history. 10 Baha'i women whose only crime was their religious faith were hanged in Shiraz's Chogan Square after being given a choice. And the choice was renounce your belief or save their lives. They had to choose between remaining steadfast in their convictions and principles or meet a tragic fate. Each of them chose to remain steadfast and true to their ideals and beliefs. Each was given 4 opportunities. 4 times they were asked to recant their faith and say, "I am not a Baha'i." And every one of them refused to do that, every single time. On June 18th, after bidding tearful goodbyes to their loved ones in the prison hall, the 10 women were separated from the other prisoners. They didn't know where they were going. They were led to the gallows, where they faced the noose from the oldest to the youngest. Each woman was forced to witness the hanging of the one who preceded her. We're going to read the 10 names of these women, lest we forget them. Mona Mahmoud Nejad, 17. Her father, Yadullah Mahmoud Nejad, was executed 3 months prior. Roya Eshraqi, 23 years old, executed along with her mother, Izzat Janami Eshraqi. Simin Saberi, 24. Shaheen Shirin Dalvand, 25 years old. Akhtar Sabit, 25 years old. Mahshid Nirumand, 28 years old. Zareen Muqimi Abiyane, 29 years old. Tahire Arjomandi Siavashi, 30 years old. Her husband, Jamshid Siavashi, was executed 2 days earlier. Nusrat Qofrani Yaldai, 46. Her son, her beloved son Bahram Yaldai, was executed 2 days earlier. Izzat Janami Eshraqi, 57, along with her daughter Roya, and her husband Inayatullah Eshraqi, who also had been executed 2 days earlier. Some of the crimes that these women were accused of was being a Baha'i, not recanting their faith, teaching children's classes. That was one of the crimes listed. And for the younger women, their crime was being unmarried. They were all involved in community service, teaching children's classes, and offering assistance to all youth who came their way. Whether they were Baha'i or not, it didn't matter. If they knew that some youth or child needed assistance, they were there for them. Many Baha'i children at that point, youth, and also students in universities, were denied education and they were expelled. They would not be given their degrees, they were not allowed to go to school. And so these were the women that stepped up, some of the women that stepped up to the plate and taught these children and youth. Those who spent time with them in prison said that they didn't complain ever about their suffering, and they faced their persecution with joyfulness. Many were surprised that these women would often bring up pleasant conversations to talk about. They wanted to make things, the atmosphere and prison, tolerable for everybody around them. They were less concerned with their own suffering and more concerned with ensuring that their families didn't worry too much about them. So they would rarely talk about what they were going through in prison. All of them were hanged after the absence of any legitimate judicial process. There was no public trial, and they were held in prison for some 8 months, for others 9 months, during which time they were interrogated, physically and psychologically tortured, and oppressed in an effort to force them to recant their beliefs. They were also denied the right to draft their final will and testament. They were not allowed. And their bodies were not given back to their families, and they were not given proper burials. One has to ask, why would you do this? Why wouldn't you just say, I am not a Baha'i? Isn't that far easier? They refused because of something so much greater than themselves, friends. They had the vision for a better future because they believed in a faith that promotes the principles of gender equality. And this is something that's criminalized in Iran, and it's something that is absent. They fought for the right for education. They were children class teachers. That's what they wanted for the future generations. And they wanted justice, truthfulness, and unity. In the prayers chanted by Bahia tonight, we heard the words, "Make me as dust in the pathway of thy loved ones." You know, in my imagination, I see them. This is what they would do when the rope would come. They would kiss the noose and then place it around their neck before they were hanged. So imagine, I think, what were they thinking? Was it that they could see the pathway that they were carving out for future generations? This act of humility and sacrifice was to provide a better life for us all. Our keynote speaker tonight is Mrs. Shohre Rasekh, who will shed more light on their sense of purpose and perhaps the why of their choice. Thank you.
Good evening. It is my privilege to stand here and honor the 10 women of Shiraz on their 40th anniversary of their execution. I truly hope to render justice and to be able to render justice to their life and to their ideals. This heroic woman endured many hardships, injustices, but despite numerous limitations, they never forgot their spiritual obligations. In response to oppression, they neither succumbed in resignation, they didn't resign, nor took on the characteristics of the oppressor, becoming violent and aggressive in order to fight violence and aggression. Very important, their inner strength shielded them from bitterness and hatred. Very difficult under that condition. And made them continue to serve the people of Iran, and in particular the children. Tabassum has already mentioned that the Baha'i children were kicked out of the schools in Shiraz and in many other smaller cities and villages. They were from a tender age exposed to calumny, were ridiculed, excluded from a normal and joyful life. This woman courageously and persistently organized classes for children. And as it was mentioned, that was their crime. This was the crime for which they were executed. These 10 women found their voice as women and promoted by their deeds and action the freedom of women, the equality of men and women, which is an inseparable aspect of Baha'u'llah's fundamental principle of the oneness of humanity. And it's also a facet of our human reality. With sincerity, trustworthiness, meekness, determination, they fulfill their commitment to serve their cherished homeland. They have been resilient, and they demonstrated that constructive resilience, which is what will bring about change. I want a little bit to define what is resilience. It is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties. Constructive. I want to a little bit work on the word constructive. Obviously, it's the opposite of destructive. But it means also serving a useful purpose, having a useful and helpful effect rather than being negative or with no purpose. In the case of the Baha'is in Iran and these 10 women, constructive resilience was not a submission or passive and patient acceptance of injustice. You can passively accept injustice. Neither it relied on believing in some mysterious power that, disconnected from their action, would free them from oppression. Instead, constructive resilience required, and that is to me foundational in what they did, it requires, constructive resilience requires avoiding compromises in one's belief system and in the teachings, in their case, of their faith. Tabassum has already mentioned they could save their life easily by denying their belief, but they couldn't and they didn't. It implied also that among the prevailing chaos, the Baha'is and these 10 women, undeterred, promoted the principle of the oneness of humanity, the principle of unity in diversity. They served others, and they wanted to create a better and more unified society. I want to reflect on one point. In every sphere of life, if you think, there are two fundamental processes that are happening, particularly now in our world. One is a process destructive in nature, while the other process is integrative. Both processes serve to carry humanity, each in its own way, along the path leading towards its full maturity. The operation of a destructive force is everywhere apparent in our world. In the negative changes that have afflicted time-honored institutions, in the impotence of leaders at all levels to mend the fractures that are appearing in the structure of society. But there is something very special and in a way a bit strange. Though devastating in their effects, the forces of disintegration open up also spaces for the process of integration, to draw diverse groups together and disclosing new opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. These women of Shiraz strived to align themselves individually and collectively with forces associated with the process of integration, which they were confident, and this is so important, they were confident that would continue to gain in strength, no matter how bleak the immediate horizon. I have been reflecting. All the sufferings and pains afflicting my homeland, Iran, and the world are the inevitable labor pains of the birth of a new stage in the chapter of the evolution of the human spirit and in the development and progress of humanity. Not unlike the individual who passes through the unsettled yet promising period of adolescence, during which latent powers and capacities come to light, humankind as a whole is in the midst of an unprecedented transition. Humanity, I believe, it is my firm belief, in its majority has come to its senses. It seems unreal what I say, but that is the way I feel. Because it cannot any longer accept iniquity and injustice. The culture of unity, tolerance, amity, truthfulness, trustworthiness, justice, abolition of ethnic and religious prejudices, freedom of choice are human values and are ideas which are part of humanity's DNA. Greed for authority, power, self-interest have created chaos in our society, but the human being wants to reestablish what is innate and rooted in its soul. It cannot no longer accept and tolerate oppression and injustice. The aspiration of the people and their legitimate demands have been crystallized in such ideals as the equality of the rights between women and men, the rights of all children and youth, the rights of all the people from different backgrounds and religions. I said that the ideas have been crystallized. I want to just stop a little bit to think and talk about the word crystallized. It is very appropriate. I'm no scientist, but the simple definition I found tells me, and I'm quoting the definition, crystallization is the process of crystal forming. Crystals often form in nature when liquids, hot liquids, cool and then start to harden. Certain molecules in the liquid gather together as they attempt to become stable. Think of sugar. You heat it, it becomes liquid and diluted, but when left for a while, it solidifies. For ideals to solidify, to crystallize in the soul of people, time and pressure is needed. The crystallization of ideals cannot happen overnight, but is part of a process. It takes time to transform from a diluted form into something which is visible, tangible, and unifying. Lofty ideals and human values have always existed, but have been covered by veils upon veils of past prejudices, incorrect assumptions, and false beliefs. These human values require a period of time to re-emerge and solidify. And to demonstrate that it is a process, I go back to the year 1848. The year 1848 is very important in the history of the emancipation of women in Iran and in the world. In this year, 1848, a woman, Tahireh, who became a follower of the Bab, prophet founder of the Baha'i Faith, and a precursor to another religion immediately following it, the Baha'i Faith, whose founder was Baha'u'llah. Tahireh, following the revolutionary principle enunciated by the Bab, and in particular, the equality of rights between women and men, appeared in an assembly of women without the veil. Imagine. It created a commotion at that conference of men to see a woman without the veil. It was a symbolic gesture. And with that symbolic gesture, she demonstrated a breaking from past traditions where women had no voice and were submitted to the will of men. One of Tahire's greatest contributions was to empower women through education and knowledge, to become thinkers, shakers, and agents of change. Her legacy continued. And after 135 years, these 10 women followed in Tahire's footsteps. They brought about change in the society around them and promoted education and ideals of oneness, unity, and unity in diversity. We come now to today. The persecution of the Baha'is continues nowadays. But today the situation is very different from 40 years ago. A wide-range consensus has emerged in the expectation not only of the people of Iran, but in the expectation of the people of the globe. Despite countless challenges, age-old prejudices, and innumerable social problems that block the way for human progress, there is unity of thought at the level of ideals, hopes and aspiration, which shows an important advance that can serve as a strong basis for a fundamental change in the structure of human society and Iranian society in particular. Mahsa's unjust killing goes beyond the fact that she was not wearing the veil. Her killing became a catalyst for the affirmation of ideals of equality and freedom that have been suppressed by years of oppression. The taking away the veil is the symbol of that crystallization of ideas we have been talking about. It connects in a thread the sacrifices of Tahireh, of the 10 women of Shiraz, of Neda and Mahsa, and of all the people who sacrificed their life for the ideals of equality. This is why all these stories are our story. Many stories, but in reality merging into one beautiful common story of hope, change, and oneness. The Baha'i community had never seen, since the inception of its history, such a degree of collaboration with the rest of society and of communality in goals and views in the path of service. May the words of Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, resound. Iran shall become a focal point of divine splendors. Her darksome soil will become luminous, and her land will shine resplendent. I read it again. Iran shall become a focal point of divine splendors. Her darksome soil will become luminous, and her land will shine resplendent.
Thank you so much, dear Shohreh. This is the wish of in all of our hearts, and that not only Iran, but the entire world will see that luminosity. Now, in reading about the lives of these 10 women, you can't help but be deeply touched by the love they had for their families, for their communities, and the love that their communities and families had for them. Mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, brothers and sisters, and more. We wanted to share a few stories about them throughout the night so you get to know them a little bit. And you are left with a sense of wonderment about their strength and their accomplishments. Zareen Muqimi Abanieh was a talented poet. And, if you have the chance, please go online and read her poetry. She's just a wonderful poet. Mona Mahmoud Nejad, at the age of 17, they call her an educator online, to be called that at 17. And she loved music, and she loved to dance. Mahshid Niruman's sister speaks about Mahshid's love for learning languages. Did you know that Mahshid was fully fluent in Farsi, English, and Arabic before she started university, where she studied physics? And then in university, she went on to study French and German. So she was fluent in 5 languages by the time she finished her studies. She was sensitive and generous, and the other prisoners said she would often share her food with them while in prison. Simin Saberi, in a letter to her family, she wrote that her greatest worry wasn't for herself. And most of these women in the letters to their families, they all said that they're very comfortable, that they're doing well, and they just, she was expressing concern for her family. And she hoped and prayed that their suffering would be alleviated and worry lifted. While in prison, she would use humor to alleviate the other prisoners' sadness, and she would joke and joke, telling them one joke after the other until they would all start laughing. These women were nurses, teachers, physicists, sociologists. They were educated, intelligent women with much love in their hearts. Shaheen Dalvand was so sweet that her family called her Shirin. That's the Persian word for sweet, and she was so sweet that this name became her name after a while, and her friends and acquaintances all called her by her nickname. For many of them, they had family members who had already left Iran. And they lived in Europe, in North America, and the family members would call them repeatedly, begging them to leave. However, each and every one of them refused. Shirin saw the harassment and the dangers threatening her community, but she said she wanted to stay in her birthplace to serve Iran and its people. Their lives were one of service, love, grace, and dignity. We will be hearing 2 musical pieces now. Both of them were written by Dr. Farshid Samandarian, and they will be performed by Dr. Farshid and Sina Ettehad. And there will also be a video presentation with the voice of Mrs. Shide Kazemi. Thank you.
ژوئن 1983 در شهر شیراز 10 خانم بهایی به صورت گروهی به دار آویخته شدند. کمتر واقعی دیده شده که چنین هولناک باشد و به وضوح منشأ دینی آزار و اذیت بهاییان و مواجهه شجاعانه آنان را با مصائب نشان می‌دهد. جرم اینان تدریس کلاس‌های درس اخلاق به کودکان بهایی. این کلاس‌ها تقریباً معادل کلاس‌های یکشنبه کلیساست. از آنجا که دولت مانع ادامه تحصیل کودکان بهایی در کلیه مدارس شده بود، همگی این افراد تدریس این دروس را وظیفه و مسئولیت شخصی خود می‌دانستند. این 10 خانم بهایی که جوانترین آنها 17 ساله و مسن‌ترینشان تنها 57 سال داشت، یک به یک به طرف چوبه دار هدایت شدند. مقامات دولتی ظاهراً تصور می‌کردند که دیدن تقلای هر یک بر سر دار موجب وحشت دیگران و سبب تبری و انکار ایمان آنان شود. ولی بر اساس گزارش شاهدان عینی، یکایک این خانم‌ها در نهایت تسلیم و رضا آوازخوانان به استقبال سرنوشت خود رفتند. یکی از میرغضبان مسئول چوبه دار بعداً به بهائیان گفت: ما تا لحظات آخر سعی می کردیم که جانشان را نجات دهیم، ولی یکی پس از دیگری اول خانم‌های مسن‌تر و به دنبالشان خانم‌های جوانتر همه حلق‌آویز شدند، در حالی که دیگران مجبور بودند که تماشا کنند. ما امید داشتیم که دیدن صحنه به دار آویختن دوستانشان موجب تبری و انکار اعتقاداتشان شود. ما حتی حاضر شدیم که آنها فقط بگویند که بهایی نیستند، ولی هیچ یک نپذیرفت از اعتقادش برگردد. در واقع همگی اعدام را ترجیح دادند. تمام این خانم‌ها از چند ماه پیش از اعدام زندانی و مورد بازجویی و تحت شکنجه‌های مختلف قرار داشتند. پس از اعدام در سردخانه آثار شکنجه و ضرب و جرح فراوان در ابدان بسیاری از این عزیزان به وضوح مشهود بود. جوانترین این خانوم‌ها مونا محمود نژاد دانش آموزی 17 ساله بود که به دلیل سن کمترش به نماد بیگناهی و معصومیت آشکار این گروه تبدیل شد. همچون دیگران در روزهای پیش از اعدام کف پاهای مونا را شلاق زدند تا به روی پاهای ملتهب و خونین به سختی به سوی چوبه دار برود. ولی در ایمان او کمترین تزلزلی ایجاد نگشت تا جایی که هم دست میر غضبش و هم تناب دار را بوسید و به گردن خود انداخت. زرین مقیمی ابیانه 28 سال داشت. او در جواب بازپرسان و شکنجهگرانش که از او می‌خواستند که فقط از عقیده اش بازگردد می‌گفت فرق نمی‌کند شما بپذیرید یا نه. من در قلب و در تمام وجودم بهایی هستم. شما نمی‌توانید ایمان مرا از من بگیرید. اسامی خانم‌هایی که در روز 18 ژوئن 1983 به دار کشیده شدند عبارت است از عزت الله جانمی اشراقی 57 ساله، نصرت غفرانی یلدایی 47 ساله، طاهره ارجمندی سیاوشی 30 ساله، مهشید نیرومند 28 ساله، شهین دالوند 25 ساله، زرین مقیمی ابیانه 28 ساله، سیمین صابری 25 ساله، اختر ثابت 25 ساله، رویا اشراقی 23 ساله، مونا محمود نژاد 17 ساله.
My goodness, wasn't that beautiful? Created by our own Dr. Farshid Samandari. Thank you so much. I don't know about you, but I felt it in my soul. Thank you to Sina and Mrs. Kazemi for accompanying as well. So friends, we wanted to tell you a little bit about Mrs. Nosrat Ghofrani Yaldai. She was a gifted public speaker, even though she only had elementary school education. She was a legendary hostess. You know, at the time of the Iran-Iraq war, people were displaced, they didn't have homes. Her and her husband would take people into their home. She was known for opening her house and having the children. She had 4 children, and in their memoirs, they write that basically their house, they had a guest at their house every single night. There was always extra plates set. And she would take in people who had lost their Baha'is, whose houses had been set on fire, or who had been expelled from their cities and communities. She also taught children's classes and was a member of the local spiritual assembly where she lived. In a letter to her daughter, Bahar, she tells her daughter, "I'm doing really well. I'm very comfortable. I'm worried about your exams coming up. Please do really well on your exams so that you would make Iran and the Iranian people proud of you." That was her concern, and these were the letters she wrote. 2 of the women, Akhtar Sabit and Tahir Arjomandi Siavashi, they were both nurses. Now, Akhtar, she became a nurse because she loved children. She loved children so much that whenever a nurse couldn't work, she would be the one to take the extra shifts so she could be at the hospital. And her co-workers said that she would often not take any phone calls so she wouldn't be distracted by the outside world. When she came to work, she wanted to be fully focused on these children. And in prison, she looked after the other inmates. And the prisoners write that no matter who it was, if it was a murderer, it didn't matter. She treated everybody as though they were a noble soul and worthy of her medical knowledge and assistance. Now, Tahir Arjomandi Siavashi, she was also a nurse, and she was so good at her job that she became the model nurse of the year. But place after place, she was expelled from her work because of being a Baha'i. But nevertheless, she pressed on, and she found other jobs so that she could serve as a nurse. She married young at the age of 19 to Jamshid. Jamshid was the love of her life, and the community, they all knew about their devotion and their love for each other. He was arrested before Tahir, and he would often comfort her. Even in times when he was badly tortured, he would assure her that it was all going to be fine and that he would live. And you know, I thought about it, that he was executed 2 days before Tahir. And you know, their memory lives on. He didn't lie to her. He said he would live on. And you know, we can carry them in our hearts, and they can live on this way. Friends, these 10 women were executed 40 years ago. Many of us were around to witness the horror. I remember being young, and Doug Cameron wrote that song, Mona with the Children, that became #1 where we lived in Halifax. And I remember watching this on Canadian television about the execution of these 10 women. If you haven't seen this video, it's a beautifully made video. And it wasn't something, when you think about it, it wasn't far away. It's not something to be put into a box and forgotten about. It happened close to home, and it shaped many, many of our lives. We will now hear from the daughter of one of the executed women. She lost not only her mother that day, she also lost her sister and her father 2 days prior to June 18th. So today, June 16th, is the 40th anniversary of the execution of her beloved father. It is my honor to welcome Mrs. Nahid Eshraqi Mazloom.
Good evening. What a beautiful sight it is to see all of you. Not really full light, but in a dim light. I'm honored to have been asked to come to speak to you today about my mother and my sister, 2 of the 10 women who were executed on 28th of June. And while their story is very personal and about them, but it gives you a glimpse of the life of all the 10 women and what they had gone through. My mother, Izzat, had a very sweet character, full of love and compassion, not only for her family, but for anyone who crossed her path. And our home was a hub of activities, from friends that would come for meals, from visitors who stayed for a few days, children classes, youth gathering. So my parents were really hospitable and very kind. So everyone felt comfortable and at home. And we grew up having the pleasure of having all these people around us and feel loved and included. And my mother was the youngest in her family, and as such, she was the object of adoration of her siblings, who bring her flowers that she liked and delicacies that reminded her of her childhood. She loved nature. She would come alive when she goes to wilderness, to orchards. When it was a springtime, it was her favorite time of the year. She would just love the aroma of the flowers around. The love of my parents were truly an example for us, an example of equality of men and women. Until we were home, we thought this is the norm. And when we were out of the home, we started to realize what a fantastic relationship they had, full of love and respect for each other. Decisions were made within consultation. My sister Roya was as a child, was very happy, energetic, and active. I remember her clinging to me to read her books until she learned to read. And then for sure you could find her in a corner with a book, with a magazine. To the degree that sometimes my parents were annoyed and would tell her, "Don't you have anything else to do? Just reading?" She was completely an avid reader. And she was also an enthusiastic mountain climber. My mom used to say that she was like a goat. Any place that she would see a height, she would want to climb it. She enjoyed biking, and she loved animals. And somehow the animal seems to be attracted to her as well. It didn't matter where she was, all of a sudden we would see a cat on her lap, or we find that she has found something moving in a corner of the room or the yard, and she's entertained by it. She excelled academically, and it was very easy for her to be accepted to university. And she wanted to be a veterinarian. Because of my father's job, the family moved from cities to cities. In late 70s, the three older siblings had left Iran for studies and for work. And the two younger sisters, Roya and my other sister, the youngest of the family, they stayed with our parents. In 1980, my father retired, and they decided to move back to Shiraz, where they had a home, and where Roya was going to university. But the times was difficult times for the Baha'is. The Baha'is were being persecuted and were under a lot of pressure. Soon, my father's pension was suspended. And shortly after, Roya was expelled from university. They understood that if they recant their faith, they can get these rights back. But for now, life was difficult. They had to entertain themselves. They had to find ways to survive. They decided to open their home to those who have been rendered homeless as a result of Iran-Iraq war. At the same time, Roya was engaged in supporting youth in their studies and organizing volunteer activities to charitable organizations like orphanages. And my parents were also engaged in supporting some families who had difficulties, challenges that come as a result of all these pressures. And perhaps these were the ingredients for the being attractive to the authorities. So in November 1982, our house was raided. Whatever that was a sign of religion or not were taken away, including all the books, Baha'i books that we had, including all the frames that had symbols of the Baha'i Faith on it, letters, and whatever they could find. And at the end, they said that my parents and my Roya should go with them for questioning. The youngest in our family, and it was at night, it was past 9 o'clock at night. The youngest in the family said, whatever we have done together. So perhaps I should come. They said, no, it's only these 3 that we are taking with us. When my father was saying goodbye to my younger sister, he whispered in her ear that, don't stay alone in the house. Find someone, these people may come back. I can imagine the anxiety and worry of my parents, and I also know of the pain that my sister went through. When at that hour of the night, all of a sudden, the house is empty, the phone line has been cut, and she is alone. She had to brave the night and go find a relative in the neighborhood to come and stay with her. The next morning, they realized that about 40 other members of the Baha'i Faith from different families, including many of these, maybe most of these young women that we are remembering tonight. They were all arrested and taken to prison. For 1 month, no one was allowed to get in touch with them, and no one for sure knew where they were. And they had to live with that worry, and they had to live with that anxiety. After that 1 month, when the prisoners were moved to another prison, they had the chance to be visited. So my sister would go to see my father every Wednesday for 5 minutes, and then on Saturdays to visit my mother and sister for 5 minutes, from behind a glass window through a phone line that was monitored by the prison authorities. I know how much she longed to touch them, to hold them, but all she could do is to hold their gaze, and with her pleading eyes communicate 1,000 words that she couldn't communicate on the phone line. These women were in prison for 7 and some of them for 8 months. My family were in prison for 7 months. And this was what my sister did all this time. It was not recommended for us who were outside Iran to go back for the fear that it will complicate the situation. And my sister had the added responsibility to conveying to us what was going on. Not freely, but because we were worried that the letters would be monitored and phone lines were not as effective as today's phones. I think we know that, of course, in prison it is difficult, but we also, from the sign or from what we have heard, we know some stories from there. After their executions, we had a few of their socks. And those socks, some rugs, and even cardboard has been attached to the palm of the sock so that it makes their feet a little bit warmer. Apparently, in the winter months, it has been very cold, and they were not allowed to have shoes. In a springtime, once when my sister went to visit my mom told her, "Tell me about the spring. Has the flowers blossomed? How about the orange blossoms in our house?" And then she said, "Please inhale them for me." That day, when my sister went back, she cried for hours, feeling guilty that she can inhale the aroma of orange blossoms. And she found out later that the prison yard where the prisoners were supposed to go for fresh air has been under repair, and for months the women prisoners were confined to their cells, never seeing the sun or breathing fresh air. Another incident that we heard was that once when there was a group interrogation, and in the group interrogation, all the prisoners will be seated in front of a wall so that no one facing the wall, so that no one can see who else is in the room. And in one of these group interrogations, Roya notices that our father must be in that room. So she was brave enough to ask the judge to please allow her to turn her head and take a look at her father, since she misses her father so much. The judge thought that, okay, I would let the immediate families see each other for a few minutes. Perhaps you should use this time to convince each other to recant your faith and then go. And then when the judge notices that the loving sentiments between my father and Roya, he turns to Roya and says that, why do you put yourself under so much agony? It is just one word. Just say that you are not a Baha'i. I will let you go back to university. I will make sure that your father gets his pension back, and you will have a peaceful life. And Roya said, Your Honor, the love of the parents is natural, but I cannot give up my love for my Lord and for my teachings, for the principles that I believe. And the judge said, we will see what you're going to do when you are being executed, at the moment of execution. And Roya said, I will pray to stay firm until my last breath. They all stayed firm until their last breath. While I'm here and talking to you about my mother and my sister, and there are so many stories that there is no time to talk about, but I cannot ignore the fact that 40 years ago on this day, and probably at an hour like this, my father and 5 other men were executed. And the sad thing is that it is not finished. It has been going on. And even though at that time the Baha'is were targeted, now anyone who dares to defend the human rights of anyone who tries to support the women of Iran, they are targeted. And every time we hear of another person executed, another woman shot in the eye, another child is being killed, all those pain and agony returns. And that is really, truly the significance of a gathering like this. Because not unless we all put the well-being of humanity and justice for all in the forefront of our thoughts and minds, we will never have justice. Thank you.
Thank you. How can you find the words to thank Mrs. Mazloum for being here tonight? Thank you for your generosity and your courage sharing your story with us. And she has kindly agreed to be in the lobby if you have any questions or you'd like to share any words with her. The story of these 10 Baha'i women, as she mentioned, isn't over. And it will echo for centuries to come. This was a chapter in the story that still continues to evolve today in Iran, as Mrs. Mazloum mentioned. It's a chapter of women's strengths, resilience, and sacrifice for gender equality. Every day, more and more Iranians are searching, aren't we, for social justice and are focusing on gender equality as one of the most pressing challenges facing Iran. We are now witnessing the blood, sweat, and tears of thousands of young women in Iran seeking equality with men right by their sides. Fathers, brothers, uncles, and grandfathers are standing by their daughters and their loved ones, standing up for justice with the utmost heroism. But you know, these stories of suffering, we have to make them a story of unsuffering by giving them meaning. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Why? Why did they have to die for this if we don't do something about it? In the words of Simin Fahandish, a Baha'i International Community representative to the United Nations in Geneva, we read, "Let us stand together, united by our shared experiences of resilience and our collective efforts and sacrifices for Iran, to show that we are inextricably linked regardless of faith and background." Friends, look around the room later tonight. We're from different religions, different backgrounds, but we can come together working for better communities. We hope that remembering the execution of these 10 women will illuminate and reinforce conversations around justice and gender equality in Iran. Our story is one, and we will raise our voices until our shared ideals are realized. As mentioned before, we can carry them all in our hearts, their determination, their calm, resolute hearts, their purposefulness to bring about better lives for the next generations, much like Qurratul Ain, or Tahireh, the given name that was given to her that Shohreh mentioned. And Tahireh was an influential poet for any of you who have read her material. She was a women's rights activist, and she lost her life in 1852. 171 years ago, she was late 30s when she was executed. And you know, her last recorded words were, right before they killed her, "You can kill me as soon as you like, but you will never stop the emancipation of women." For the last portion of our program, we're going to hear a poem that was written by Tahireh. We will first hear it read in Farsi and then performed by Bahia Peters and Vale Ashraf, and they will be singing it for us in English. Thank you.
So this poem is attributed to Tahireh. گر به تو افتدم نظر چهره به چهره رو به رو شرح دهم غم تو را نکته به نکته مو به مو از پی دیدن رخت همچو صبا فتادم خانه به خانه در به در کوچه به کوچه کو به کو می رود از فراق تو خون دل از تو دیدم دجله به دجله یم به یم چشمه به چشم جو به جو دور دهان تنگ تو عارضن بر این خطت غنچه به غنچه گل به گل لاله به لاله بو به بو ابرو و چشم خال تو سعید نموده مرغ دل تب به تب و دل به دل مهر به مهر و خو به خو مهر تو را دل حزین بافته بر قماش جان رشته به رشته نخ به نخ تار به تار و پو به پو در دل خیش طاهره گشت و نجید جز تو را صفحه به صفحه لا به لا پرده به پرده تو به تو
I would explain all of my grief, dot by dot, point by point. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we would explain all of my grief, dot by dot, point by point. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. Wherefore to catch a glimpse of thee, I am wandering like the breeze, from house to house, door to door, place to place, street to street. I would explain all of my grief, dot by dot, point by point. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. The separation from thee, the blood of my heart gushes out from my eyes. Torrent after torrent, river after river, wave after wave, stream after stream. I would explain all of my grief, dot by dot, point by point. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we face to face we meet. An aching heart has woven thy love within the pattern of my soul, stitch by stitch, strand by strand, thread by thread, pleat by pleat. I would explain all of my grief, dot by dot, point by point. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet. I would explain all of my grief, dot by dot, point by point. If heart to heart we talk, and face to face we meet.
Did that grab your heart as much as it did mine? Oh, wasn't that beautiful? Thank you so much. Friends, we've come to the end of the program, and it is the sincere wish of the organizers that you leave here knowing more about these women and a purposeful attitude. You were all given cards upon entering. Now, we wanted to draw your attention to these cards. There's a campaign that the Baha'i International Community has launched. It's a social media campaign, and it's inviting artistic contributions. If you want to write anything, paintings, photography, whatever it is, public statements that emphasize the shared experience among the people of Iran as they work towards equality. Now, here is the website. It's www.ourstoryyesone.bic.org. It's at the bottom. And this Sunday, they would really like if you could use the hashtag #OurStoryIsOne on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you like to spend time on social media. Please use it as a means of spreading this initiative and also sharing your artistic endeavors. We now invite you to join us in the lobby for a reception, and there are friends wearing tags that say "Ask Me." So if you want to know more about these women and perhaps have any questions, please feel free to approach these friends who are eagerly waiting for your feedback and questions. On behalf of us all, I'm sure that it would be okay if I could express my gratitude to the organizers for tonight, who worked tirelessly to get it done in a very short period of time. We have the wonderful technicians. You are absolutely brilliant, and our stage manager, volunteers, ushers, and also I wanted to draw your attention to the 10 beautiful flowers that were designed by dear Neda Tanha and her family. How wonderful are they that each peony represents one of these women. Thank you all for being here, and please join us in the lobby. Look forward to speaking with you all further. Thank you.